mean, I think it's definitely an advantage when you travel to expect to be surprised
Yes.
and to be mindful of the fact that your way of doing things is not the only way of doing things.
Yeah.
And you can learn a lot from other cultures, and you can also learn to appreciate some things about your own. But I found it was really hard to find all the information that I was looking for. And it was also really hard to find it in one place. I might be able to find a snippet here and a snippet there and read 20 Facebook groups and message people and ask them what they did. But I definitely was not finding everything I wanted and getting answers easily. So I thought, well, let me create something kind of like a Yelp where people can go and review their experiences, what it was like, kind of crowdsource it, because even if I travel for the next 5 years, I still can't go everywhere, right? That was part of my idea. And that is now one pillar of my site.
Welcome to the Winging It Travel podcast with me, James Hammond. Every Monday, I'll be joined by guests to talk about their travel stories, travel tips, backpacking advice, and so much more. Right now, I'm taking the podcast on the road travelling with me. So tune in every week for short form episodes detailing all my travels alongside my Monday guest episode. Are you a backpacker, gap year student, or simply someone who loves to travel? Then this is the podcast for you, designed to inspire you to travel. There'll be stories to tell, tips to share, and experiences to inspire. Welcome to the show. Hello and welcome to this week's episode where I'm joined by Emily Wilson, who runs the organisation Pets Around the World. I do love dogs, so when Emily told me that she wants to reach out and talk about it, I was in. So we're going to talk about travelling with pets, dogs, and also discuss some logistics of that, how Emily can help you, and of course some wanderlust and travel stories too. Emily, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you for coming on the show. Where are you based right now?
So we're currently nomadic. We left California in the beginning of August for a road trip around the US and to Canada, I guess, so Northern America. And so we're in Florida right now at the last part of our road trip, and we're heading back to California for Christmas. So we've really, really enjoyed our time. We're kind of slow mads, I guess is the word that a lot of people use. And I like it where we try and go to one place and stay for about a month. And then we kind of fast travel in between to get to the next destination. And then, so we kind of did the four corners. So we left the Bay Area, California, where I lived. We went to Victoria in Vancouver Island. Then we traveled across the country to Maine, and we stayed in Brunswick, Maine. Then we went south. Now we're in Florida. And then we're going to be heading back next week, back to California. So big square.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we've done the whole trip across Canada in July and August. Yeah. Got through to Maine and then come back across. It's an epic trip because it's so big.
Yeah. It really is. And when you're trying to go across and not, because my husband had to use his vacation times when we're not stopping in one place for a while.
Yeah.
And so it's like, we don't, you keep looking at the map and going, oh my gosh, and this place looks amazing. And this place, how could we possibly get across the country in 2 weeks? This is insane,
Do you have what you'd say like a base in US? Do you spend more time in one state than any other?
Well, California would be it.
Okay.
This is kind of new for us in terms of being nomadic. So we've lived in San Jose in California for the past 15 years or so.
Oh, wow. Yeah. We're going to delve into some sort of backstory of travel, and then we'll get onto the pets because it's a really interesting subject because a lot of people have pets and maybe are fearful of traveling with pets because of the logistics, the paperwork, the money, whatever it is, how it works. So we're going to dive into that. But before that, I just want to know, as a backstory, where you're initially from. Was travel part of your life from an early age?
In terms of my backstory, so I was born in California. And if you hear my accent, that's where it sounds like I'm from. But I actually grew up in South Africa.
Oh.
So
wow.
We moved to South Africa when I was 8. And then we came back basically for my last year of high school. And then I stayed after that. And when I moved back for university, then my parents moved to Kenya.
Wow.
And so then I spent some summers there in Kenya and things like that during university.
So what is the connection there with Africa as a continent? Is it parents' jobs or family?
It was my parents' job. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they worked there. Then I lived there for a number of years. So we left California, we moved to South Africa, and then, with traveling within Africa itself, Southern and Eastern Africa mostly, but also coming back and forth to the US. Um, now there's actually a few direct flights, but at the time, we'd always either go through Asia or through Europe. And so we'd often stop for maybe a week or sometimes 2 weeks in different places. And so I saw a lot of places around the world just going back and forth between the US and South Africa, even as a kid. Um, and then we had a dog when I was a teenager. He was a little Jack Russell Terrier. And whenever we came back for longer periods of time, he'd come with us. So I've been traveling with my dog since I was 15.
Wow. I think I saw on your website, you got a Norwich Terrier, right?
Mm.
One from Norwich in UK. So I guess it's, okay.
Yeah.
Pretty...
And I have been chastised by British people because in the US we don't call them Norwiches, they're Norwiches.
Norwich, yeah,
right?
of course, yeah.
And then, but I said that to someone when I was in Portugal, and she was British, and she was like, "That's like going somewhere and calling it Arkansas. You just don't do that." And I was like, "Well, okay, sorry, but in the US it's at Norwich."
Norwich, yeah, interesting. Okay, so you must have hit so many different countries by the time you're like into university. You must have gone to like 10 or 15, right? If you keep going across and probably doing trips within those areas of the world. So that's quite an early start for understanding like what travel is and also other cultures as well.
Yeah. So I feel like, in terms of where do you get your love of travel from or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just sort of, I don't even think about it like, oh, I learned to love travel as an adult or whatever, going on vacation. It was just like, in some ways, it's more just like, it's just what you do. It's just how you live. It's not even a choice, I guess. In some ways, it's just how life should be, if that makes sense.
Yeah. But obviously, a lot of people don't move away from their neighborhood, right? Growing up because they feel they don't need to or don't even want to. It's quite an interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
Especially in the USA, because in Europe, I think you can travel quite cheaply. Now you can anyway, to other countries like short haul flights that are $20, $30. But I guess back in the day, that probably wasn't a thing. But I imagine now people can have the opportunity to travel a bit more growing up because it's not as expensive as maybe it was, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 years ago.
That's probably true. Yeah, it's become significantly easier just in terms of the flights and you can just go online and research everything versus, when we were kids and my dad had to like get paper magazines and chart out the flights and call the travel agent and call back 20 times, none of that. You just go Google something and there you are.
Was there like a one particular trip in your childhood or even growing up into adolescence that really sparked it or you really enjoyed and you thought, oh, wow, that is incredible?
I guess I would say one of the things that was very interesting was that I lived in Transkei. So it's in South Africa, but it's a country that doesn't exist anymore. So it was one of the places that was created by the South African apartheid government and stuff. So I think that's kind of funny. Like, oh yeah, I lived in a place that doesn't exist anymore.
That's quite unique.
Yeah. But the entire, South African coast and everything, it's just gorgeous. And living there in particular, because it's not a place that's super high tourist. So just, going to the coast there, there's the monkeys and the tree. It just, I don't know, it just feels so untouched and a place that like, unless you're from there, no one goes there. So it's kind of magical in that regard. So yeah, it's fascinating. But in terms of going places with my dogs, I think probably as an adult, one of the things that we did that was really interesting was, so my husband and I have been married for kind of a long time. I think this is our 21st year. And so now this is a while ago. We, like I mentioned, we've been in San Jose for about 15 years. So this would have been 15 or 16 years ago, which makes me really sad. He had a dream of, learning Spanish.
Yeah.
And I'm one of those people that I'm like, you don't just talk about dreams. If you've got something you want to do, you just got to do it, right? So my little dog was the puppy of that Jack Russell I mentioned that we had when I was a teenager. So she was his puppy, and we got her as an adult. So very special. Her dad was very special, and then getting his baby, and then she lived till almost 17. That was super special too.
Wow.
But we wanted to go to South America, learn Spanish, but it was like, how do we've got this little dog, what do we do? So we did leave her with my parents while we were backpacking for about 3 months. And we visited 6 different places where we thought we might want to stay here and for another year or so. And then once we picked a place, so we picked Cuenca in Ecuador, then we flew back and grabbed her and brought her back. And so she lived in Ecuador with us. And that's another place that, it's so different from the US in terms of like, there's so many rules and regulations and, oh, pets can go here, they can't go there. Just do kind of what you want when you're somewhere like Ecuador. She just goes in the bus, she goes in the bag, she goes wherever. It's just not a big deal. So yeah, she went all over Ecuador in the bus with us, and
wow.
We had our home base in Cuenca where I was teaching English and things like that. But that was just really, really fun going. And there's no like dogs can go on this beach, but they can't go on this beach.
Yeah. I think South America is a bit like that in general. It's a very blasé approach. A lot of countries, anyway, maybe not all, but yeah, it's very much hard to do what you want. I sort of jokingly say it's lawless. It's not lawless, but there are some like a lot of soft laws. You kind of just, as long as you don't kill anyone, I think you kind of do what you want. I was actually going to ask before we go into the pets that you've got and stuff like that. Do you feel more at home in America or in somewhere like South Africa or another country in Africa? Where do you feel home for you?
It's a good question, but it's one that I think the answer changes. When I first left South Africa and came here like a university time, definitely I felt like a fish out of water in the States. That reverse culture shock, I think is what they call
it.
Yeah. So definitely had that, especially going back for my last year of high school. There was, because I've been in the South African school system by then for 10 years or so. And then going back for this one last year of high school, I was just constantly going like, why is this happening? What even, just some weird things that are silly. For example, in South Africa, you have school uniforms in the States.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
People dress in ways that no one in South Africa dressed like, just things like that. Much less just talking back to the teacher, or the teacher gives you a study guide for your quiz and you're like, why are you giving this to me? It was just strange things. So yeah, but now after being in California and all that for so long, I definitely feel at home in California, and I don't get surprised constantly of weird things happening. And, so I'm sure now if I went back to South Africa, I would be surprised there too.
That'd be interesting. Yeah. It's interesting that because you've already got like that sort of understanding from an early age, and you won't be phased as much by different cultures because you probably experienced quite a culture shock and reverse culture shock. But whereas like I didn't really get culture shock until I was like 23 because I went to Asia. Whereas before that's been like in the UK and some European countries and Australia, they're kind of same. I wonder if that's a big advantage when you're younger.
I mean, I think it's definitely an advantage when you travel to expect to be surprised.
Yes.
And to be mindful of the fact that your way of doing things is not the only way of doing things.
Yeah.
And you can learn a lot from other cultures, and you can also learn to appreciate some things about your own that are good too. Like I went to Japan, gosh, probably 5 years ago now. And Japan has lots of things that I just, you're sort of on edge all the time. Like, oh, it's, am I allowed to do this? Am I not? I don't know. So, you can kind of go in knowing, and then you get there and you find out like, oh, did that all wrong or whatever. So.
Yeah. We're going to come on to non-English speaking countries about, with dogs, because I'm interested to see what your experiences are if you traveled to some of those. Next question, just before we get onto that, is do you think USA is probably like, in your experience, I know we jumped ahead a little bit here, it's probably like the best or one of the better places for pet travel?
So if you're comparing what I was just saying about Ecuador with the States, so one of the things about places like that makes pet travel really nice and easy is that there aren't all these rules and laws and regulations, whereas here there are, and you have to follow them, or you can get fined or ticketed or things like that. On the other hand, America is a dog-loving society. They're also very conservative about anything that could get them sued. And they're also very conscientious about things like health codes. So, I mean,
Yeah,
in a lot of ways, that's good because we don't tend to get food poisoning and things like that, like you
of
do in South
course.
America.
Yeah.
Um, but that means, going into places where you need to eat and your dog can't go, that might be difficult, especially depending on the
Mm,
weather or the time of the year that you're in a certain place. So, for example, I think California is incredibly dog friendly and easy because we have such good weather.
yeah.
So it's really not hard, even in February or January, to just go sit outside in a parklet and just enjoy the nature, enjoy the patio dining. And a lot of beaches are dog friendly too,
Mm,
something like that. But once you start getting somewhere, even a place that is dog friendly like Florida, um, do you really want to take your dog outside and go to the beach in Florida in July? You're going to give your dog heat stroke.
yeah, yeah, exactly. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
So you kind of have
Hmm.
to pay attention to the weather a lot, I think, to decide how friendly something is. And then every state's a little different too.
Yeah.
For example, California doesn't allow dogs to go to farmers markets, but Maine does,
Mm.
and so does Georgia. So, there's some things that are just weird and like why, I don't know. So you kind of got to know what the rules are for different states too.
I think that's quite a US specific example because being from UK, this is one rule for all. There's no like county
Mm.
lines or different areas that have different
Yeah.
rules. And that's why US is so interesting. It could be dogs, it could be paying tax, whatever it is. You just have to look at the rules of the state and just see if there are any, and if there are, how different they are. It's quite an interesting country in
Hmm.
that respect. Yeah, I was thinking about we want a dog in the future, not now, but we want a Bernese dog, and we just know like going somewhere like
Mm.
Florida or even California in the summer, you just wouldn't do it because Bernese just cannot cope with hot weather. So you have to like
Hmm.
obviously think about that sort of perspective when you have dogs as well, like the weather and stuff like that, and where you are. That's interesting because that is based on if you can move. If you're based in Florida full time, well, you can't really get Bernese, can you? That wouldn't be very responsible, would it?
I mean, they're gorgeous dogs, and I
Yeah,
suppose people do, but I wouldn't recommend it.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Interesting one. Okay, can you tell us about your dogs? What have you got?
so mostly I've been talking about my one who passed away.
Yeah.
That's my little Jack Russell. But so I have a border terrier, and he's actually 15 and a half. So he's
Mm-hmm.
a senior citizen who's traveling with us. So that has its own interesting things, some huge benefits, and then also some, it's sad a little bit too.
Okay.
He's kind of old and doddery and
Yeah.
whatever, but he's a trooper. So yeah, but he's a border terrier, about 20 pounds.
Yeah.
And the other one is and let's see if we're going to be British or American. He's a Norwich in America and a Norwich in England. And he is about 13 pounds
Yeah.
and he's fine. And the reason, it might be weird, someone's like telling you how many pounds the dog is,
Yeah.
but that makes a huge difference for a lot of pet travel because it matters for flights and it matters for a lot of hotel rooms and things. They'll
Oh
put a
wow.
weight limit on dogs. Sometimes even renting an apartment or things like that too. So the weight of a dog is actually very significant. And if I was a person like yourself who travels a lot, I might try and find a dog that has the temperament of a Burmese, but the size of a something less than about 20 pounds.
Yeah. Which Bernese aren't because they're huge. I do love Bernese dogs though.
They're lovely.
Oh, just dreamy. I've got some quick fire questions about pet travel, but first, can you tell us about pets around the world and that you run? Can you tell us what you do and what services maybe you offer as well and how you can help people?
Yeah, so I started it actually just out of my own necessity. We were trying to plan to go, well, we knew we wanted to go be digital nomads. I have a bucket list of places that I wanted to go, and some of them included places like Thailand. And I've already been to Bali, but I thought, oh, that might be great to go back. A couple of places in Europe, and I also was interested in some other countries in Africa. And so I started one by one trying to go and look up what were the rules about taking all my dogs to all these different places.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them very quickly get crossed off the list. Like Bali, you can't take a dog.
Oh,
Literally, like it's not even like New Zealand or Australia where it's difficult. You just cannot bring a dog into Bali.
huh.
Um, Other places like Thailand, I started learning that you can do it, but it's complicated. And once you get there, it's really hard to get around. So it starts to go like, oh, maybe not the best idea in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But I found it was really hard to find all the information that I was looking for And it was also really hard to find it in one place. I might be able to find a snippet here and a snippet there and read 20 Facebook groups and like, message people and ask them what they did. But I definitely was not finding everything I wanted and getting answers easily. So I thought, well, let me create something kind of like a Yelp where people can go and like review their experiences, what it was like, kind of crowdsource it, because even if I travel for the next 5 years, I still can't go everywhere, right? So that was part of my idea, and that is now one pillar of my site. So anybody who travels with dogs or is interested in traveling with dogs, you can either go look and read if you want to travel, or if you already have. I'd love for more people to add information. It asks like, how easy was it to get in? How easy was it to find a place to stay? So it's a little like Yelpy, you give it stars and stuff. And then other people can hopefully read it and learn more about what it would be like. After I came up with that idea, then I started realizing like I didn't really have an intention of becoming a blogger, but that's what I turned into. And so I realized like, oh, I need a lot more content. And there's tons more that people would love to learn about. So then I started writing destination guides, started writing things about how do you fly with your pets, road trip with your pets. And one of the things I also learned is I am not a dog trainer and I don't ever pretend to be. My dogs are well traveled. They're not always well behaved, but we work with them and try and manage it and work on the particular skills that they need to learn. But definitely there's times when I'm like, I don't know how to get them to do whatever it is that they need to do. So then I ask my dog trainer and she helps us. There are some skills that are essential for traveling with dogs, like training them to be happy in a crate, training them to walk nicely in a leash, just things like that. Like you can't travel if your dogs don't know those two basic things. If they get anxiety in the car. So definitely I talk about some of those sorts of things as well on the site, just trying to help people who are interested. And sometimes that just means going an hour away on a beach trip for the afternoon. And sometimes that might mean, flying to a different country, but it all kind of starts with some of those same basics. So trying to emphasize that in a lot of the posts and help people out that way.
Yeah, you kind of answer my next question. Like, is there a gap in this type of information for travel with pets? Because like you said that, I just wouldn't even know where to look. So you must be like one of the only people who kind of collate all this information, right? Or is there more people now who are starting to be like you and collate information for pet travel?
There's definitely some other bloggers out there who write about different places. So there was one I love. Her name's her blog's name is Travelnuity, and she's really helpful with Europe in particular.
Yeah.
But again, it was sort of like just the countries that she's been to and visited. And that's kind of what I kept finding over and over again. It's like people would write about the few places that they have been to. And she's traveled a lot, so she has a lot. But if they hadn't been there, they weren't writing about it. And I was like, well, but I'm looking at like everywhere from Malta to Thailand to South Africa.
Yeah.
And no one is writing about all of them. So yeah, there was no one place to go. And then there's definitely ones where, in Argentina, I was looking at that. Anyway, so there's definitely resources for the more popular countries.
Of course.
But some of the ones that are less popular, it was virtually impossible. And even sometimes the documents that are, put out by the government officials, they're in other languages, like the one for Costa Rica, it's in Spanish.
Of course.
So I had to use, I speak some Spanish, but not enough to read government documents. So, I'm plugging it back and forth between copying and pasting into Google Translate and hoping that Google Translate understood the form. It made sense, so I'm guessing they did. But, things like that. So I can see why people would have a really hard time, because you can't even get the official information in English, right?
Yeah, and I think you're doing the right thing about if you need people to come in and write an article about an obscure place that you've not been to, obviously, because unless you've been to every country in the world, you're not going to cover all the countries, are you? So, yeah, that's a good idea. I think getting people to write about experiences, because how else would you do it? Is there a Guinness Book of Record for someone who traveled to every country with a pet? Is there one of those? There probably is one, right? You should try that. It'd be quite good fun.
Oh, there's a person on Instagram that I follow, and she's incredible. She's got actually a little Jack Russell, and she's traveled through, I think, maybe 50 countries.
Okay. Yeah.
But not by plane. So she goes
okay.
by boat or car or bus or whatever, walks sometimes. So she's like crossed through Asia. Anyways, she's crazy and has an amazing Instagram, but she's French. Um, so
Okay.
you have to translate her post too.
Okay. And do you run the blog with Chris as well?
Yeah. He's incredibly helpful. His day job, he does a lot of business automation.
Okay.
Um, so he does kind of the tech side of things, especially, and he's trying to help me set up some things to do, make, blogging. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that I had just no idea about when I started.
Yeah.
Just getting WordPress to look right, and
Oh God, yeah.
so doing some things to make it a little more automated. And he's also the photographer. Not neither of us are professional by any means, but he has a passion or an interest in it.
Yeah.
So he's enjoying it, and now he's buying all these gadgets, gimbals, and whatever. And he's like over there swearing at the thing. Why is it not turning left? And I'm like, I don't know.
I think as long as you have a passion in it, I don't think techie stuff is that important. I think it is important to a degree, but as long as you've got the passion for it and you keep going, I think that's the main thing.
Oh yeah, persistence is definitely key.
I've got some quick fire questions if you like about pet travel. People listening right now are probably thinking, "Oh, I want to know about this and this." So I've kind of come up with some questions that I think people would think of asking. Let's go with, you mentioned earlier about teaching your dog or training your dog, for example, traveling on boats and planes. Pets going on boats and planes, for example, like might even be a basic question. Where do they go?
So that's back to the size and why the size is important.
Yeah.
Because if they're less than 8 kgs, almost all airlines will accept, not every single one, but almost all airlines will accept a pet in the cabin.
Okay.
British Airways is an exception. So,
Yeah, doesn't surprise me.
since that's maybe one that well, it's because of the UK and they are trying to keep their country rabies free. So yeah, but if a dog's under 8 kgs, they can go on almost any.
Yeah.
And then when they're over 8 kgs, there are some airlines like Southwest doesn't have a particular weight limit, but they do have a bag size limit. So it could be something like a pug, which are a little more dense, but smaller. And so they still fit in the bag, but maybe they weigh 10 kgs or something.
Yeah.
So there's some airlines that are like that. And then they just go in a little, it's not very big. So your dog really has to be pretty small to go in cabin. And you wouldn't want it to be too big because they go by your feet and you already get,
Oh.
Oh, I guess I'm showing you, but
Yeah.
I can see it. I was just saying there's not a lot of space with my hands. So if a dog is bigger than those 8 kgs, especially internationally, then they are able to go through. And this is important because people use the word cargo a lot, but there actually is two things. So one, cargo is that's usually referred to when you hire a shipping company, and the dog can go without you. So you could fly, and then a week later, the shipping company can send your dog. It might be on a totally different flight. It might even be on a non-commercial flight. And that's cargo. And excess baggage is significantly cheaper. So you can go from the States to Europe for about $400 with excess baggage. But if you go cargo, it might be anywhere between $2,000 to $4,000.
Oh wow. Cool.
So big difference.
Yeah.
Usually if you're trying to take your dog to the UK, that's what's required is the cargo. And most people will end up paying somewhere between $2,000 and $4,000, depending. Like a Great Dane's going to cost way more than a pug.
Yeah.
That's why most people prefer excess baggage. And then they go in, people say, oh, they're just in there with the luggage then? Oh my gosh, what do you mean? That sounds horrible. But no, it's, it's pressure controlled.
Okay.
The people are trained to put the animal there.
Right.
It's climate controlled. So they're not in there freezing and they're,
I would have thought that you just chucked in with baggage, as in like next to it.
But what it does mean though is the people who are handling the baggage are the ones who place it. And so then when you go find your dog at the end, that's where you go look for them, is in the oversized baggage area.
Okay, got it.
So
yeah,
so that's, I don't know, but yeah, they're not just checked in the plane. Oh, and I was just gonna say, but because you had asked about boats and things like that, you can't go on very many cruises. There's only one cruise that I'm aware of that takes dogs, and that goes from, I don't know if it's New York or somewhere on the East Coast, to the UK.
Okay.
So that's the only one I know. And even then, the pets don't go in your cabin with you. There's like a special room, almost like a kennel, where the pets go. And most people are on that for a waiting list of about 18 months
Wow. Okay.
to take their dog on
Yeah.
that particular cruise. So yeah, but they often can go on ferries. That's really, really common.
Yes, ferries, of course. I guess the other part of travel not really asked about here is traveling different countries by land. So if you're driving from, I don't know, France to Spain or whatever, different countries by land borders, is that a problem? Was that easier? Or is it like each country got their own rules? Is it quite difficult to plan? What's your experience with that?
So if you're in the EU, it's fairly easy.
Okay.
As they don't really check anything
Yeah.
at borders. And they all kind of agreed on the same rules. So that's, just like a lot of things
Yeah.
they all agreed on some set of regulations. And so then they're not checking anymore. If you are going back and similarly between Mexico, Canada, and the US, they've come up with just those trade agreements that they have.
Yeah.
And so they've made it very simple. You just need your rabies certificate.
Okay.
But we crossed back and forth between Canada a few times on this road trip. And, we always said, oh, we have our dogs. And they always went, they just waved us on through. They
Fair
didn't
enough.
care. No one
Okay.
checked.
Yeah.
But I kept track of that kind of information. And it seems like maybe about a quarter of people going back and forth between Canada get checked.
Okay.
And the other 3/4, it doesn't seem like the agent cares. It seems like they check a little more coming in and out of Mexico, but even then, doesn't seem like it's a huge priority for the border agents to
Mm.
to process that. Where it becomes a lot more tricky are there's countries that are classified as high rabies countries.
Okay.
So you can imagine what some of those probably are. It's countries where a lot of Asian countries, Eastern European countries, South American countries, things like that. And so when you're coming back into the EU, back into the US, and you've been in one of those countries, it's much more difficult because they require what's called a rabies titer test.
Okay.
And I didn't know what that was a year ago, so I'm going to assume no one who's listening does, unless they're really invested in dog travel.
Yeah.
And basically what they do is they draw your blood, the dog's blood, not your blood, the dog's blood, and they check to see if they have enough rabies antibodies that they would have been protected in that other country. So even if they did get bit or something, that they wouldn't be then bringing it back into the EU or the US. The huge challenge around that, though, is that by the time you get the blood drawn, you send it into the lab, it gets however long it needs to be processed. Usually they require about 3 months.
Wow.
So you can't on a whim go, oh, I'm going to go to Colombia next week or next month and then be like, and then I'm going to go back to whatever. So if that's what you're doing, if you're picking one of those countries, you really need to plan for it in advance and get all of your paperwork and send it in. And it's not cheap, and it costs somewhere between about $200 and $400 per dog.
Right.
On what the vet charges.
Do dogs get the same as human beings in terms of like a rabies jab? How does it work for is it the same sort of thing? You get your rabies jab, and
there's two main kinds. One is a 1-year vaccine and one is a 3-year vaccine.
Okay.
And different countries have regulations around which one they want.
Right.
So the US is a 3-year. I'm trying to remember if it was the EU or the UK. But anyways, one of those is a 1-year.
That's interesting. Is that based on the booster you get with the jab, I guess? Right? Because if it's 1 year, what's the difference between that and 3 years if it's the same jab?
I don't know.
I'm not asking you. I'm just saying, it's just a bit of a strange rule. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's the formula is different. Or,
yeah.
I don't want to speculate.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Okay, with paperwork, you mentioned paperwork a minute ago. Do dogs have like a dog passport? Is that a thing? Or even different animals have like a passport, if you like, in quote brackets there, to travel? If not, what do they need?
Yeah, so that's actually a really important question because in the EU, they have something called a pet passport.
Okay.
So it's an EU pet passport.
Yeah.
And once you have it, that's super helpful to get around the EU. If you're leaving, you're going to UK, coming back, going out of the Schengen zone, coming back, whatever. Really, really, really helpful to have that. You can even use it to go back to the US and then come back to the EU.
Oh, nice.
And it looks a little bit like a passport. It's this little booklet,
Yeah.
But people get confused and they ask about it all the time. If they're from the US and they're wanting to go to the EU, they see that there's this EU pet passport. And so then they go, oh my gosh, I don't know how to get it. I asked my vet about it. And my vet said they don't do pet passports, and then they get kind of worked up about it because they don't understand that that is something given by EU countries meant for travel within EU countries, into or
Okay.
within.
Yeah.
Um, so you cannot get one in the US. It's impossible.
Hmm.
And I have seen some, I guess I would call them scams. I don't know, where they call them pet passports. You can like order them online or something.
All right.
Some of them are
Yeah.
kind of cutesy. I think they're meant to be like cute. I don't know. And so I don't think those are meant to be a scam, but they don't
Mm,
do anything for you other than be cute. Um, but the some of them I think are actually scams. They're trying to trick people into paying a bunch of money
of
to
course.
get this
Yeah.
document that doesn't do anything. So the US, if you're just traveling within the states, you don't need anything. Again, back and forth between Canada and Mexico, you just need your rabies
Yeah.
certificate from your vet, nothing else. But if you're going from the US to another country, the US has a document that gets sent into the USDA, and it's like a certified health certificate.
Hmm.
And so that's required to go to the EU. And that's probably the most common one, but different countries require slightly different things. It's one of those things that's like why you're pulling your hair out. Because if you want to go to country X,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
like, you have 10 days and you have to get it within 10 days and you have to have X, Y, and Z. And then country Z, they're like, oh, you have 30 days and you only need X and Z. You don't need Y. So, you really, if you're gonna be going to multiple places, you can't just wing it.
Damn. There goes my podcast name. What about certain airlines in your experience, or basically, are they known amongst your peers? What are some of the better ones or easier ones to deal with for pet travel in your experience?
That is a question that gets asked constantly in all the pet travel Facebook groups that I'm in.
Okay. Yeah.
And people report on that too. And so I kind of just do some unofficial tallies. Um, and really, the answer, if you're talking American domestic airlines, one huge preference seems to be Alaska. They seem to be really good.
Okay.
They're also one of the only domestic airlines that will fly dogs in the excess baggage that I was mentioning earlier.
Yeah.
Most US airlines won't do that. So that's actually really helpful if you're trying to travel with a big dog. But yeah, Alaska Airlines people seem to really like. Everyone else, it just seems sort of hit or miss. It's kind of who the gate agent is at the time, if they're friendly, if they're not. And you hear all kinds of stories. Like some people are like, I took my dog out of the bag and they sat on my lap for the whole ride and no one said anything. That's totally against FAA regulations.
Yeah. I'll be surprised at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other person said, I just opened the bag a peek to look at my dog, which I don't recommend, by the way. If they're sleeping, leave them alone.
Yeah.
And then the stewardess, the air flight attendant came over and like, yelled at me, zip your dog back up, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So, it really just seems like it depends on the people who are at the gate and the people who are serving your section of the cabin,
Mm.
and perhaps what lecture they got from their boss that week. Or Alaska, though, generally gets some pretty high results. And then Lufthansa, which is a European airline, also is one that
Yeah.
I
German.
think has won national awards or international awards and has a very highly rated facility for. So when I was just talking about the dogs going either in excess baggage or cargo, a lot of times people have to go through Frankfurt,
Yeah.
sort of as a layover, and before they go on to whatever their final destination is. And they have a very nice facility, much nicer than a lot of places.
Mm.
So people will often pick Lufthansa if they have to do a layover to get wherever they're going because they know their dog is going to be very well taken care of in that transit time versus some other airports where they may just leave the dog in the crate. They're just sitting there. And sometimes it's like 18, 20 hours. That's a long time. Lufthansa will take them out. They'll walk them. They'll feed them. It's nice. They do a really good job.
Wow. Like a proper service, basically. Oh wow. You
Mm-hmm.
actually said something that reminded me of a question that I want to ask was if you're in the cabin and your dog is with you as hand luggage, if you like, but you're long haul, how do you obviously feed the dog to make sure it's okay? Like how do you, if it's in your like cabin above your seat, and it's like long haul or even like
Oh,
medium haul.
they're not above your seat. They're they're by your feet.
Okay, right. So they're never in like the baggage handle at the top, hold at the top.
No, you're making me laugh.
Uh,
Oh my gosh, I can't imagine you just squish your dog up there and with all the other carry-ons floating around. No, they go by your feet.
This is a patron shout out to Laura from the Swamp Soup Stickers, who has contributed £5 to the podcast on my Patreon. Thank you so much for your support. Really appreciate it, and it helps the podcast to keep going in the future. If you're interested, head to the show notes where you'll find a link to my Patreon. The website address is patreon.com/Winging It Travel Podcast. For £5 English, you will receive some trendy stickers from myself in the post, a shout out on each episode, and also my digital travel planner by email. Thank you for your support.
okay, and you're obviously allowed to feed them, right?
Yeah, well, you're supposed to keep it zipped up, but yeah, you can unzip it and give them little treats. A lot of
Cool.
people do that,
Yeah.
especially when you're taking off and landing, kind of bothers their ears just like it does
Yeah.
us. So a lot of people will give them like a little bully stick or some kind of a chew that helps with the clearing of their ears. The topic of feeding, though, is one where some people don't like this idea, but really it's better not to feed them that much,
Okay.
especially if you're on a long haul flight. Because feeding means they need to use the bathroom, and
Okay.
you want to minimize that sensation.
Yeah.
And dogs will often hold it, but you want to minimize their discomfort.
Yes. Yeah.
So it actually is better to feed them a small meal a few hours before your flight, no more than about 3 hours before your flight. And then, other than just like if they're starving or if they're crying or something like that, yeah, maybe. But otherwise, it's not the best idea to give them very much to eat.
I didn't think about that. Yeah, you're right. Huh. Very interesting. Okay, I've got a question here. You mentioned Bali does not accept anyone. Is there any countries that might surprise people that just reject pets in total?
So yeah, Bali's the one that totally surprised me, though. They're just like, nope, not at all. But they're almost all island countries are very strict.
Okay.
Because if islands, so rabies is the reason.
Yeah.
Rabies is really hard to eradicate, and if you bring it in, then it can just decimate a population or whatever. So some places like Japan, they don't say no, but they make you really work for it. You have to really want to take your dog to Japan if you want to go. And then I think people are much more familiar with Hawaii and Australia as being very difficult places to take your dog.
Yeah.
So I would never recommend someone trying to take their dog to somewhere like Australia, New Zealand, some of the other island countries, unless they were moving there, going on a vacation, even one that's maybe like 1 or 3 months long. It wouldn't be worth it. Your dog's in quarantine for up to a month, depending on where you're going and just the expense of it. You have to go through cargo, which, as we talked about, is very expensive. You can't do, they can't go in the hand luggage like they can somewhere like Europe. I wonder if there's anywhere else that surprised me like that.
Having lived in Australia, New Zealand, I kind of think, oh yeah, I would see why they would be like that. They're quite strict with like a lot of things like that. As a whole, bringing stuff in. What about insurance? I know we talked pre-recording that you obviously don't have numbers here. It's quite a big question, and probably people need to do their own research. But for like US, for example, does travel insurance for pets get covered in normal pet insurance?
Travel insurance for pets?
Yeah, does that exist? Is that a thing?
I don't think so. For people, you have two kinds of travel insurance. You have one which is just like your health insurance that you can use in another country. And then the other is like if you have some trip interruption, or there's pet health insurance that many Americans pay for a monthly fee. It's insanely expensive. A lot of people in the UK do too. I think 3 countries tend to have really expensive veterinary care, and they're your biggest audience. So the UK, Canada, and the US all tend to have pretty expensive vet care. So a lot of people from those 3 countries get the annual pet insurance.
Yeah.
And typically you can use it wherever you are. So like right now, if we needed to go to a vet in Florida, we could use it. If we're in California, we can use it. It's just, as long as we're in the US, we can use it. But if we go to outside of the US, actually, no, I don't think I looked into that. But in places where we're going to be going, like, for example, we're going to Italy.
Yeah.
You know, we can afford to just pay out of our own pocket. It's not, the
Okay.
cost is not so much that we would end up bankrupt because our dog is sick.
I think because we are both from these expensive vet bill countries, I just assume that you'd want to get insurance if you're going abroad with your pet, because it'd be so expensive. Like Italy, for example, if your pet is ill or you need something done, in my mind, it's like, oh, it's going to cost loads, thousands, but maybe it doesn't in countries that are not our countries. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's cheaper, quite a bit cheaper. I'll give a quick example. So, like that paperwork, to get the USDA
Yeah.
official letter and form to be able to go to Europe. The cheapest I've seen that in the US from other people just reporting is around $150, and I think I saw that once. Most people seem to spend about $250 to $350. That's pretty common for the document. And I've seen up to 800, I think was the most I've seen in the US. And I was quoted the other day 700 by a vet here in Florida. Very expensive. To get that pet passport in Spain and Italy and France, it's 50 euros.
Is that it? Hey, yeah, just a quick one. I just want to say there are many ways to support this podcast. You can buy me a coffee and help support the podcast with $5. Or you can go to my merch store with the affiliate link with TeePublic, where there's plenty of merch available to buy, such as t-shirts, jumpers, hoodies, and also some children's clothing. Thirdly, which is free, you can also rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, or Good Pods. Also, you can find me on social media on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. Simply just search for Winging It Travel Podcast, and you'll find me displaying all my social media content for traveling, podcast, and other stuff. Thank you. Wow, I do miss Europe sometimes. Okay. It's crazy.
So yeah, just the cost is very, it just, you can't compare.
Yeah. That's crazy difference. Okay. Is there any questions you think I've missed that are quite important with regards to pet and traveling? Have we covered most bases, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just if you're the kind of person who just wants to travel kind of locally, like a typical American vacation, you get your 7 days and you go somewhere within a day's drive. The most important thing is just pick a pet that works great for your family. Doesn't matter the size or the breed. Other than when you start to get more than two, you run into trouble finding somewhere to stay. Even campsites often limit at about 3.
Yeah.
So unless people do the kind of boondocking or they do RVing or things like that, it gets very difficult if you get more than 2, and almost impossible once you get more than 3 dogs. So that's something to keep in mind. And it's also easier if they're under about 50 pounds, just because hotels often have limits, like we'll accept 2 dogs, no more than 50 pounds each, things like that.
Right. Okay. Got it.
Starting from scratch, that's something to just keep in mind if you know that you're going to be wanting to travel a lot.
It's just interesting that if you want a big dog, this sounds a bit harder. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not impossible, but you have to read the fine print of every place.
Yeah.
And it's not always the same too. Like we've kind of enjoyed staying in Staybridge Suites when we're going, because it fits with our credit card miles, so we can often stay there for free. And it has a little kitchenette and stuff, so it helps us save money. But I read one and it was like $150 per night per pet, no more than 50 pounds each, something. And then the next one that we stayed at was like $50, no size restriction, no breed restriction, no nothing. So yeah, it's just, and that's the same chain, so it's really weird.
That's strange. Interesting.
So yeah, if you know that you're the kind of person who wants to travel a lot, you may want to consider the breed and the size and those sorts of things, and then just really work with them as a puppy. Get comfortable in the crate, get comfortable in the car, and as long as you have those things, you're going to have a fantastic traveling dog. Socialize them, that they're really comfortable with bicycles and people, and good on trails and things like that. Yeah, you'll have the best life ever with your dog, being able to go wherever you want, campgrounds, national parks, trails, beaches. You can have a fabulous time. You don't have to, go crazy and leave the country. But if you do want to leave the country, small dogs are the way
Yeah,
to go.
it's weird because you think, I've only ever seen small dogs, of course, on flights. And they are generally all well behaved that I've seen personally. And you even get like some people want to stroke them a little bit as well. I guess that I don't know if that's good or bad because it might affect the rhythm of the flight if people want to come and say hello to the dog. Not sure if that's good or bad. But yeah, I just think, they're kind of not a pest. They're fine. They're quiet. They sit down. Yeah. Now you said that they don't go above you. Like, oh yeah, of course, they're this lady's feet.
Yeah, you made me laugh.
Yeah. Can we also give a shout out to cats? I don't know if you have much experience or even knowledge with like speaking to other people about traveling with cats. Is that just a similar thing? Because they're small, they're light. Is it the same sort of rules, etc.?
I do not own a cat, so I won't speak from personal experience. However, because cats and dogs are often on the same forums and in terms of what the rules are, I tend to know what all the rules are for cats too. So let me just back up to say, cats do not like to travel, generally speaking, the way dogs do.
Yeah.
Cats tend to like their space, get their familiar routines and things like that. And when you disrupt them, they often have a much more difficult time making the transition. That's not a blanket statement. There are some people, there's a cat that I know from Instagram who unfortunately just passed away, but had been to, I don't know, like 100 national parks and would walk on the trails and everything. Is this fantastic cat.
Wow.
Yeah, amazing. But anyways, but that's an exception. And part of the reason that we're so amazed by it is because that doesn't happen very often. So cats generally don't like to go on vacation. Just to put it that way. But if you're moving, of course you want to take your cat with you. Wherever. Yeah, that's not even a question. And so then you do need to go through the process, whatever it is. Cats, because they don't tend to have rabies issues, they are not limited as much by some of those, like, they have to get the rabies titer test, and they're just a little bit easier in terms of the paperwork and movement between countries. So they are easier, and they tend to be smaller, so they tend to fit in hand luggage and can almost always go on the plane. They don't usually have to go cargo or excess baggage, so it makes them easier.
Yeah.
They just don't really want to go. So
makes sense. From my experience of cats. Yeah. Okay. I've got a little fun question here. I've got tell listeners 3 countries that you've traveled to with your pets that may have been your favorites. You can't include your home country.
So we went to Canada for a month as part of this road trip. And we loved it. Oh my gosh, we were like, Canada, please adopt us. It was fabulous. And in terms of taking dogs to Victoria, absolutely incredible. They were allowed a little trickier with restaurants. Not all the patios were dog friendly the way they are in California and a lot of the states. But so many trails, they could go off leash. Yeah, it was amazing. So if you are a dog person and you live in the Pacific Northwest, go to Victoria. Highly recommend it. So that's amazing. South Africa is incredible from the perspective of it's just got so many, like, the beaches and the hikes and it's just a very dog centric, a little bit like the UK, I think, where everyone has their dog and everyone just kind of takes their dog everywhere, their little dog. They go on holiday with you, just sort of a thing. So really fun that way. And then, like I mentioned before, Ecuador was just great in terms of no one really caring, and so and people loved her too. Like, we'd go to the park every day, and my husband, she played frisbee. She would throw the frisbee and she'd catch it and do little tricks and stuff, and so all the kids who lived in the neighborhood would come out and want to throw the frisbee for her, and she'd run around chasing the frisbee. And so it was like a nice little icebreaker too, like to get to know some of the kids in the neighborhood. And so it just made a really big difference, I think, in building some community and just getting to see the country in kind of a different way. Yeah.
I actually thought you said Victoria's great, and I just think because I live in Canada, I don't know if this is an issue or not, but like other animals, I'm talking like not just other dogs. I'm talking like bears, for example, like in Vancouver or North Vancouver. If you go like on a walking trail, you technically could be encountering a bear. Like, does that sort of thing come into your mind where you go, or is that a worry?
Yeah. So, we try and well, there's plenty of people I suppose don't, but we try and follow the regulations of the parks that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
And usually the people, the rangers or whatever, they know what animals are there.
Yeah.
And so typically, if you're in a place where there's bears or snakes or what have you, there will be signs that tell you. And often then that comes with it is leash rules.
Okay. Yeah.
Versus somewhere like Victoria where, there was an owl. Yeah, that was kind of intense. So my 13-pound, he's a little too small. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that he's quite small enough that there could be an owl. But we had this, it was gorgeous. Oh my gosh. And he was probably 3 feet tall.
Oh, wow.
And he was sitting in the tree and just, I don't know, he was watching my dog pretty, some eyeballs there.
Yeah.
And then we were watching him and looking at my dog and going like, this is so cool. This owl's just in this tree right here. It's beautiful. We're enjoying it. And my dog's on a leash. Nothing's going to happen. But I was like, oh, my dog had been running around and we didn't know this owl was there. It's possible he could have swooped down and, I don't know.
Yeah.
But, so that definitely, but yeah, we just try and follow the regulations that have been established by the parks because we assume that they know better than we do about what the animals are capable of in that particular place.
Yeah, I think just follow the rules, basically. I guess if you don't follow the rules, that's your own risk. Sometimes, like being based in Canada, like Northwest or other parts of the US as well, with the bear thing, like people sort of joke about bears, like, oh, aren't they fun? I'm like, well, they're not really that fun. You don't really want to run in. You don't want to run into one, do you? It's just a bit of admin you got to deal with, and I think you yourself will probably go into a bit survival mode to make sure you're okay. But having a dog as well, it just adds an extra stress, doesn't it?
And a lot of the national parks will limit you from going to some places where there are, especially like grizzly bears and things
yes,
like
grizzlies,
that.
Yeah.
But that's the national parks. There's plenty of, like, for example, we love to go to Lake Tahoe. Lake Tahoe has a lot of black bears, and they will often, that's why if you've ever been in mountain communities like that, they have those the garbage cans that you have to spend 10 minutes figuring out how to open.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to keep the bears from opening them too. Yeah, and so we were at a cabin rental a couple of years ago, and it had one of those out front, and it didn't have a fence, and so that means that if we want our dog to go outside to go to the bathroom, it's a little bit of a pain every time. You got to put it on a leash, go outside, and some of the people who lived it was a vacation rental, so it was a mixture. A lot of people actually live there, and they just let their dogs go outside, and the dogs are trained to come back. But I remember being scared of like, I don't think my dogs know enough about bears and about where we are, so I did the extra of making sure that they're on the leash to go to the bathroom, because that was like my feeling of needing to keep them safe. But I imagine that not everyone does, and eventually one of those dogs is going to meet one of those bears, and I don't know what's going to happen.
It's a very good question, that, because my friend lives in North Vancouver. In the summer, had a real big black bear. I know black bears are the most docile out of them, but still a bear. And he just wanders into the garden, goes to the bin, like you say, a normal bin, and starts eating things out the bin. And obviously my friend was inside, taking a video inside of from the window, and the bear's just chomping there, sitting down. But upstairs is a dog that they've got. The landlord's got a dog, absolutely barking away, like left, right, and centre. Bear didn't care. And now I was thinking, okay, so he probably can hear the dog upstairs, right? Don't really care about what that dog's doing or what that's trying to bark at him. But I do wonder, like, if there was no building that's just like a free-for-all, what would happen? Would a dog try and attack it? I don't know. Literally wouldn't want to know what the outcome would be, because I think the bear would probably, if it gets annoyed, could do some damage. But yeah, that's a bit of an interesting thought.
Yes.
Yeah. So
my goal is to not find out the answer to that question.
True. But like, because where I live in North Vancouver, there's no choice. Like, they just come down from the Grouse Mountain, like 10 minutes away, and just walk into people's gardens. So if your dog is just outside chilling in the garden and a bear suddenly wanders in, which you can't do nothing about, I don't actually know what happens. But obviously, people in North Vancouver do have dogs, so obviously they're maybe used to it or know how to treat that situation. Yeah.
Yeah. Although I wonder if this might apply. I couldn't say for sure, but I was talking to a dog trainer in Maine who had recently lost her pets. She had a couple and they were seniors and they passed away. And her gardener was saying, you need to get another dog because your yard is getting ruined. All these critters are coming in now. So some small things like gophers, but also bigger things like coyotes and some other things that he said was like digging holes and taking things from our garden. And he said, yeah, when you had your dogs, I never had any of these problems. Your yard was fine.
Oh, wow.
But now that you don't have dogs, your yard's getting ruined by these outside critters.
Yeah.
So it is possible that the critters are aware of who lives there and pick a different yard to go to. I don't think you could guarantee that if you had something really tasty in your yard. But...
I've got a few more questions. Do you ever travel without your pets anymore?
Yeah. I mean, not right this second because our life is kind of constant traveling and they're with us. But before we started doing this, I was an educator. And so we had summertime to travel and I like to go places that I've never been before.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we went to Japan. We went to Bali. We went to Spain and France a couple of years ago. The really nice thing and that was super helpful is my husband's brother lived in the same town that we did, and he's young, single, so he'd just come over and pet sit for a couple of weeks. And so it was built in. It was lovely. The dogs love him. We know they're safe. We just freeze a bunch of food and feed him, and
fair enough.
And so we had a swimming pool, so he's like, it's like a little vacation.
Yeah, vacation for the dog. Yeah.
Yeah. So it worked out super wonderful for us to do. Because I think it's one thing like when we're going to go to Europe for a year next year, that's fine. But I don't necessarily want to bring my dog on a plane to another country with all the paperwork and the stress or whatever for
of course
a 1 week, 2 week American holiday.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Which kind of brings me on to the next question for next year. What have you got planned travel wise? Yeah,
so fingers crossed. I'm a little concerned because of the canine respiratory illness that's been showing up, that something might happen similar to what happened with COVID flights. I don't think they'll cancel flights for people, but they might say, oh, we're not flying pets or dogs right now because we don't want diseases to be transmitted. And if things are that bad, obviously, we don't want our dogs to get sick either. But I am a little concerned if that might disrupt us. I don't know. Well, you can email me in January and we'll find out. But put a huge hiccup in our plans. But assuming that doesn't, we're supposed to be leaving at the end of January, and our first stop is Italy for a month. And then we'll be doing what's called the Schengen Shuffle, which for people who don't know, that means they allow tourists into the EU or the Schengen zone, which is a variety of European countries, for 90 out of 180 days. And so you're allowed to be there on a tourist visa. So if you want to stay for like a full year in Europe, you can't stay in some of those main countries that people often think of, like France and Spain and Portugal and Italy, full time. So people shuffle, they move in and out of some of those countries and with some other countries that are nearby, but not in the Schengen zone. So places like Albania, Turkey, Bosnia, places like that, and kind of go back and forth. So that's what we'll be doing. So kind of 1 month, maybe up to 1 to 2 months in a place, and then we'll go somewhere else for another 1 to 2 months. And we'll do that probably for about 2 years. That's our idea.
Oh, wow. And that is fully remote working as well?
Yeah.
Is that with this service that you offer now with Pets Around the World, or is it you got side work as well alongside of it?
Oh, for me, yes, that's now my job.
Okay, lovely. Yeah.
For my husband, it's a little bit of a different story, but yeah, for me, with education, after COVID and everything, I was like, I think I need a break, and started planning all this. And anyways, yeah, so we have kind of a 2-year sabbatical type thing going on, and
Yeah.
so we started it now with this road trip, and then
Wow.
we'll be leaving, and that helps us save some money too by
Yeah.
being in Europe, especially in some of the Central European countries. Cost of living is significantly lower,
Yeah.
so that's why we can afford to do it. Versus here, like, we talked about vet health insurance. People health insurance is what will keep us from being able to do that here.
Yeah. Okay. That's a valid point. Yeah. That Schengen shuffle that you mentioned is new for UK people because since we left the EU, we now have to do that, which is a whole new concept because before we just travel wherever you want for as long as you want, you can work wherever you want. But now it's a
Yeah.
thing. So that's kind of what we're getting
Mhm.
used to now. And even now, no one's really sure the rules. But like you said, it's 90 days out of 180. So effectively, you can only travel 6 months of the year in the Schengen zone, basically. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. People who are doing the shuffle, Americans who are doing it, the UK is one of the places. I didn't mention that, I wasn't thinking of it. But the UK is one of the places that they can go to get out
Yeah.
of the zone.
Yeah. 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 Of course.
It just happens to be a much more expensive place, so we are not putting that on our list for right now.
Well avoided.
But
It's really expensive here. I haven't been back for a year and it's gone crazy. I don't know what's going on. It makes Canada seem cheap, which is unheard of. But there you go.
oh, that's disastrous then. Canada's not cheap.
That's not no. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, that's great. Can you remind the people what your website and what you can offer? Just remind them what you can offer for pets, advice, and where they can find you as well.
Yeah, so it's Pets Around the World, just all one word smushed together, petsaroundtheworld.org. And that's my main platform where I have all of the content there that is meant to help people. That's primarily its goal, is to help people who are interested in traveling with their pets, even if it's 1 hour or if it's flying to a different country. And of course, I'd love if anyone has already traveled with their pets, if they want to go and leave my version of a Yelp review, explaining what their experience is like going to that place. That helps other people tremendously. Eventually, this is sort of a future goal. I'd love to, because I'm thinking about the things that I need. So to know some vets, the places to get those pet passports, places to like dog boarding facilities that will take day walk-ins. I'd love to kind of collect that information and have a directory. But that, I think I have to probably hire someone to help me with that. And I don't make enough now to do that yet. So
Yeah.
that's
Fair.
kind of a long-term goal. Yeah. So eventually I'd really like to do that. I think it'd be very helpful because that's probably one of the hardest parts about traveling the way we do it. It's like you constantly have to find these services. So a little tricky. And then in terms of social media, that's mostly just for fun.
Okay.
We use it a lot of times to kind of showcase the fun things that we're doing. So like on Instagram, that one is Pets Around the World, also all one word, and then _Emily.
Okay.
And so just lots of really fun videos of like our dogs going to the beach and going on hikes. Every Wednesday, I have a walk on Wednesday. So you go on a walk with my dog. It's cute.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. So so Instagram is a great place to just sort of see what we're doing and just get oxytocin from cuteness of dogs.
It's key. It's absolutely crucial to life. And the best thing about your website is you do cover from literally 10 minutes of walking or an activity to traveling across the other side of the world. At the minute, it's great because you can just search by country or area or region, activities that help on there. If you've got a bit of a dog training bit on there as well. So it's like covers all the things we discussed today. It's a great little site. And also it's great that it's growing. I think that could be a real good, like say, directory of information for pet owners.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the day when I can add that service on because I feel like it's constantly people are just asking those questions and all of that, but I'm gonna have to grow a little more before I can add that.
And also, in theory, you might have more time if you've got this 2 year sabbatical coming up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I hope so. So maybe in about 6 months or so I can
yeah,
start working on that.
absolutely. Awesome. Okay. We're going to finish the episode with some quick fire travel questions. I ask these to every guest. These are not specific to pets, these are just you personally, your travels from the start to now. And I'm going to start with
It's travel question time.
your top 3 favorite countries.
Okay, so this is not a country. I guess none of these two are. I'll tell you my top 3 favorite places.
Okay, places. Yeah.
So Zanzibar and the
Oh,
Galapagos are 2 of my top 2 that are tied.
yeah.
Both of those places were incredible. Once in a lifetime. Like if you can go, don't even think about it for a second. Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. Zanzibar and Galapagos. And then third place changes all the time. I don't know. I feel like there's sometimes I'm like, oh, it's this one, and sometimes I'm like, oh no, it's this one. But Turkey's the one that popped in my head right then, so I'll just go with that one.
Okay, Turkey's great. And what about 3 places that you've not traveled to that are next on your hit list that you're looking forward to?
Well, so we're going to be going to quite a few places in Europe that I've never been. I've never been to Italy, and
Wow.
that surprises people for the amount I've traveled. They're like, "What? You never been to Italy? Like that's just a classic country." So that's exciting. I'm going to go there. I never even really thought about or knew much about Montenegro.
Ah,
Um,
hidden gem of
but
Europe.
because of because of the Schengen shuffle, you kind of look into some places that you're not as familiar with. And yeah, I'm discovering these places that are just like, what? This is beautiful and amazing. And I'm actually really excited to go. I'm glad that, visa rules are forcing me to try something I didn't know very much about. So, like Montenegro and Albania are 2 countries that we'll be visiting or spending a month in each one.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm looking forward to going to both of those places.
And what about if you could sit in one city with your dog with a cup of coffee and just watch the world go by, just sit there and watch it? Where are you going to sit?
Barcelona.
Okay, it's quite a popular answer, that one. Okay. And what about if you could live in another country for a year that you've not lived in before? Where would you live?
I guess that's kind of what I'm doing. So I guess my answer is, well, actually that may not be 100% true because we are traveling with our dogs. So I'm picking some places that are much more reasonable with dogs.
Yeah.
So for example, like New Zealand is a place I'd love to go to, but that doesn't make any sense. So yeah, I think New Zealand might be a place I would pick. Maybe Argentina. We visited Argentina and we really liked it. It made more sense at the time to go back to Ecuador, but we really liked Argentina and we wanted to go back.
Interesting. Okay. And what about a top 3 favorite international cuisines or foods?
Well, one of the reasons I picked, because you said sit at a coffee shop, one of the reasons I picked Barcelona was because how much I liked sitting there and eating the things.
Of course. Yeah.
Maybe not the coffee so much, but I'm not a coffee drinker, but just the hot chocolate or the just it was just whatever they put in front of me. Somehow it was amazing. So the food there is definitely top. I was 12. We went on one of those trips back and forth. We went to Hong Kong.
Oh, nice.
And between South Africa and the US. Yeah, so this was before the British gave it back. This was back in the 90s.
Oh, wow.
But anyways, they had kind of that hot pot, that Asian hot pot.
Yeah.
I can still taste it. It was just so good. It was amazing. Yeah. So I'm assuming that didn't go away just because the change of government, that you can still go get amazing hot pot. Another one is like on the coast of Kenya, so in Zanzibar. That's part of what I loved about it. One of the things that's super interesting is the mix of so it's Indian, African, European, all the spices and everything. So they grow the spices right there. So like the pepper, the nutmeg, it's all from the trees that are right there. So the food from Zanzibar is mouth. It's just, you've never tasted anything like it. Um, because the spices literally came off the tree that day.
Zanzibar is in my top 5 places to go. I haven't
Yeah,
been.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So
it's
it's
incredible.
just incredible. So, and you can eat well for not very much.
Hmm.
Like, for example, there was a guy there, he owned a restaurant, and he was like, we were there kind of with a bigger group. So I think it was, I don't know, less than $5 a person. And
Wow.
he set up this whole spread of tables for
Yeah.
all like 12 of us on the beach. So our toes were literally in the sand while we were eating like prawn curries and vegetable curries and, a whole fish that was roasted in, I don't even know what, nutmeg or something. and and my toes spent the whole time just wiggling in the sand like with happiness.
Wow. Sounds dreamy. Okay.
Oh yeah,
What about a favorite beach? Now you mentioned a beach.
go with California. Um, Not a particular one though, but I love, love, love Northern California. Like if you get north past San Francisco,
Fair enough.
so but between San Francisco and the Oregon border,
Right.
um, they're, especially if you go winter, they're cold and it's
Mm.
gray and they're big. The waves are big, and you got to bundle up in your jacket, but there's no one there. There's just miles of beaches, and you're just there by yourself. It's just amazing.
Beaches in California and Oregon, they're huge. In
Hmm.
terms of like, they go for miles and there's so much
Yeah,
space. And like you say, there could be one person with a dog, but it's not going to like impact you because it's so big and you just go anywhere. It's pretty incredible sight.
yeah. So I love that.
How about this one? What about a favorite walk or hike that you've done?
The one that just popped in my head right then was we just went to Glacier a couple back in, when were we there? October, September? Yeah, September, end of September. Oh, in Glacier National Park.
Oh, okay, right, okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
But that's for the reason I like it. I mean, it was very busy, so I tend to like things that are less crowded.
mm,
Um, but it was so accessible. Like you could be, my grandma, or you could be a kid, or like everyone could really enjoy it, I guess.
mm.
Didn't allow dogs though, so that was the downside. But um it was probably just 2 miles. There was kind of a boardwalk. The trees were beautiful. There was this like the river was rushing down,
Mm.
and it kind of, it got crowded by these rocks, and so it created this like sheet of water, so clear and beautiful. And now I feel dumb because I don't remember what the name of the trail was.
It sounds lovely.
But it was gorgeous, and definitely like, because national parks obviously they're beautiful anyways. But this one just really stands out as like, oh, this is amazing.
Mm. Yeah, we tried to go as many national parks in Canada and USA because that is amazing. So well looked after. One of the best countries in the world for them, I think. Okay,
Mhm.
last question of the episode is going to be: if you were to give a few sentences as to why someone should go and travel, not necessarily just with dogs, just in general, what would you say to that person as to why they should?
I think it goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning related to kind of culture shock and seeing how the world works in different places. If you never leave, you never realize that there's any other way to do life. And so then you just kind of get into like oh, this is just how the world works.
Mm,
And especially if you're American, we tend to have a very like, oh, we're the best country in the world kind of an
yeah.
attitude, which in many ways we probably are lovely, and in many ways, we're not. And so, for example, when I went to China and they've got these trains that are just flying along 300
Yeah.
miles an hour or whatever,
Yeah.
and California has spent the past 10 years like bickering over 2 miles of land and spending $10 billion, and you just go, okay. Like, but and people are like, why would we want to train? And I've been on one, and so I
Mm,
can, that goes so fast like that. And so I know why we would want to train. People who've never left California wouldn't have that perspective, and so then
absolutely.
they don't realize the what it can bring to the life in the state, and so you just don't have the ability to kind of see that new perspective.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't see the wonderful things that are happening around the world that make life more interesting and challenging and fun and unique.
Emily, thanks for coming on to the podcast. It's been a great chat. Learned a lot about dogs and travel today, animals in general, but yeah, I've learned that dogs don't go at the top in the hodl. So yeah, it's been a fun chat. Thanks
That's
for coming
important. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
It's always fun to talk about dogs.
Indeed.
Thank you for listening to my Winging It Travel podcast episode today. You can find me on Instagram at James Hammond Travel or Winging It Travel Podcast. You can search for both. I release weekly clips of this podcast episode, as well as photos from the last 8 to 10 years of my travels. You can also follow me on TikTok, Facebook and Pinterest by searching Winging It Travel Podcast. I do release daily content to do with travel and the podcast throughout the week. Also check out my website, jameshammond.org. There's content about myself, my travels, and there's also a newsletter sign up as well as a contact form. Finally, please rate and review the podcast on Podchaser. This is my platform of choice. Alternatively, you can rate this on Apple or wherever you get your podcasts from. This really helps the podcast gain a bit of traction for the future in terms of guests and content. And I'm glad to see that you guys are listening out there, reviewing it and enjoying the content so far. Stay safe, stay humble, keep listening, keep traveling, and I'll catch you soon. Cheers, James.